It's about 11 o'clock on Friday, June 30th, 2023. I wanted to show you, after 1 week of keeping the cows off the field altogether in the back 20, what it kind of looks like. So the last area they grazed is along the fence line down there. And so that's a week ago. It's 7 days of rest for that area. This area I'm standing in, so that was 2 weeks ago. This is 2.5 weeks ago right here. 3 weeks ago, and no wait. So that would be 4 weeks. Because the 21-day rotation plus 1 week. 3.5 weeks, 3 weeks, 2.5 weeks, 2 weeks, 1.5. I don't know. The math doesn't add up. I'm not doing the math right. Something. Okay, but anyway, so coming through that part of the field, I noticed the grass was getting taller and growing really thick, right? This is kind of an example of what it looks like up close, but it's thicker. There's more of it and it's taller. So down by where the chickens are, there's a lot of dead grass that's not growing anything. I think there's not really any good summer grass there. The goatweed is competing with the grass, but I think the grass is winning. If I let it grow, the grass will beat the goatweed. So over here where you're looking, about half of this is goatweed and half of this is grass or some kind of weed. And then, oh, there's the sheep and the calf that didn't go with the rest. I was wondering where they were. You can see a couple cows in the distance there on the back 20, which still is really green and really tall. Lots of weeds. Not a lot of grass compared to the weeds, but still more grass than there is here right now. So by that tree, that's where the sheep and the calf is hanging out. So the bank of this little stockwater pond, it's growing all kinds of weeds. This is where the ducks like to nest. They probably have some nests out here I just don't know about yet. So yeah, that's kind of the story on what's been happening in my 60 acres. This is a good central spot, I think, to look at it all. But you know, like I remember about a week and a half ago, I was standing right about here. I was looking that way, and it looked brown. And the reason why it looked brown was because of all the spring grass, like this, was taller than the green grass, and so you couldn't see the green grass. But now you can see that's changing. This area is all goatweed. It was not goatweed last year here. The goatweed last year, you see where that it's kind of brown, like halfway between here and that tree. That's where the goatweed was last year. This area here didn't have hardly any goatweed. I think the goatweed's just growing where it hasn't been before, and where it has been before, it's not growing very well. So I think goatweed's just something you just let it grow. Let it do its thing. It will deplete its nutrients and change its environment until such a point that it can't grow very well. Just like grass will do if you let it, you know. So anyway, that's kind of the story, I think. So what I'm doing is I'm standing right now in a lane that we created to allow the cows to travel from these areas to water, and the water's still out there. The calves can still get the water, the sheep. I assume they're doing okay, they're not moving at me. And on the other side, this wire runs like halfway down my property, the one you're looking at here. And this side is the lane that we use when we're grazing out over here. And they come back here, they go back get the water over there. So that's kind of the story. This is all goatweed. A lot of grass in between the goatweed, but it's still a lot of goatweed. So that's kind of a survey of the situation, at least from ground level. You know, it might look different from the sky. Yeah, that part there, that first area that we're going to graze when we start rotational grazing here again, is mostly grass, and it's tall, it's thick, it's summer grasses. This is nothing compared to that. This is just like scraggly grass that's barely alive. So the temperature right now is in the mid 80s. We've been getting temperatures in the upper 90s for the past week. We haven't had rain for about a week and a half now, I think. The ground is starting to dry out. I don't have any puddles on the land anymore. Humidity's dropping, which is nice. Hopefully there's enough water underground that the grass is putting its roots deep, accessing that underground resource of water. Yeah, this stuff is Bermuda grass. This is really wispy, thin stuff. But there's thick stuff over there in that part. Ooh, it's really nice in the shade here. It is really nice. You can see what the dung beetles do to these cow patties. You just tear them to pieces. They desiccate them, they dry them out, and then the fly larvae can't survive if it's too dry. We have a nice wind blowing from the southwest, which indicates to me there's going to be a storm soon. The forecast says like Tuesday or Wednesday we might get a storm, like a 40% chance of a storm. I would appreciate a storm. I think the grass appreciates getting water every week or so. I don't mind the humidity so much. I know that it's hot, it's uncomfortable for me. The cows don't have somebody asked this a while ago, and so I should probably answer that question. I've been meaning to answer this question for a while. How do cows deal with the heat and the cold and the weather and the rain and the wet and everything like that? Okay, so if I were to come out here naked, I would die, either due to heat or due to the cold. Our body can't tolerate the weather, right? And so we wear clothing. That's really the reason why we wear clothing. Of course, it's modest, but without the layer of fibers on our skin, we wouldn't be able to tolerate the heat or the cold, right? It'd be much more difficult. And I know that, you know, people say that we descended from apes or whatnot, but I think that's just impossible. There's no way a human could survive in nature without, you know, some form of advancement. They need tools. We just can't survive at all. Like, we have no claws. The only thing that we do better than other animals naturally is we can run farther and longer. So we can literally chase a deer down and the deer will fall over from a heart attack. And for us, that's just an afternoon run, you know? That's the only thing humans can do. We don't have claws. Our teeth aren't very sharp. Our muscles are not very strong. We're much weaker than all the other animals. Even the strongest among us would not be able to stand up to an animal of similar size. That's just the facts, right? So when it comes to like the weather, like we are especially vulnerable, and we do this thing, it's called anthropomorphication, anthropomorphizing. We look at an animal and we say, oh, that's just a little baby human. Okay. And I don't know why we do that. I don't know if other animals do that. I don't know if like a puppy dog looks at a calf the same way a dog looks at a calf the same way a puppy is seen, right? Or if a dog doesn't see a calf the same way they see a puppy. But for us, like, baby animals are almost like babies. And to me, that's kind of weird, right? We see a kitten, or we see a baby goat, or anything that's really a baby. Even baby spiders are cute sometimes, right? And you think about that's really weird, right? Spiders are gross. Why would baby spiders be cute, right? So we look at the animals and we say, oh, they're just baby humans. They're just little humans. They're just really dumb humans. They're humans that have paws instead of hands, or claws, or hooves, or whatever. They're humans that eat grass instead of food, right? You know, that's what we're doing in our minds, and that's nonsense. It really is. It's a silliness, right? So let's compare a cow to a human. Number one, the cow's skin is very much thicker, right? So, you know, you look at my skin, and you probably cut in 1/8 of an inch, and you'll be through the dermal layer. You'll be at the muscle, right? It doesn't take much to penetrate our skin and get down past the fat and into the muscle. A cow, on the other hand, has really thick skin, okay? And if you want to think about it in a certain way, cows are always wearing leather pants and leather jackets, okay? And just the fact that the skin is thick provides a level of insulation, both from the heat and from the cold, right? Remember, your body, and mammals have, well, all animals have a mechanism to cool their core when it's hot outside. Well, if you're able to cool yourself down when it's too hot outside, then you can prevent the warmth from getting back in with a thicker layer of coat, right? You might want to try this experiment. Get in a room that's like 68 degrees, like really cold, you know, and then put on a thick winter coat, and then go outside in 100-degree weather, okay? And that sounds crazy, but you're going to see that for a while at least, you maintain that coolness inside of your body for a while, for a few minutes maybe. So cows have that thick coat. Number two, cows have fur, right? And again, comparing with myself here, I have little hairs every once in a while on my skin. They have fur all over their body. It's a thick coat of little tiny hairs. And there's two kinds of hairs. There's long hairs, there's short hairs. And the net effect of that is they're wearing a fur jacket, okay? So the wind doesn't even affect them, I don't think. If it's really cold and they're wet and they're muddy, then yeah, it's going to start affecting them. We had that ice storm, and the problem with the ice storm wasn't that it was cold. The problem was that it was wet, and the cows were wet. And when I saw that the cows were wet, I'm like, this is not good. One of the cows was actually shivering, right? And so I put the cows in the back pasture here, where they could take shelter from the wind and the rain and the trees, right? So, in extreme conditions like that, they have a problem, but they can always go to the trees. The trees are like their houses, right? You can see they're taking shade in the trees. They're cooling off in the trees. This wind plus the shade is actually pretty nice right now. I don't want to leave this spot. I like it, right? So the other thing that they have is they secrete an oil in their glands, just like we do. So not just sweat comes out, but also this oil. And you know, you teenagers out there with the oily skin, you know very well that your body is secreting oil, right? And we'd like to stop that oil secretion because it doesn't look nice. It makes us look greasy, right? But it does have a purpose, and the purpose is to provide a level of protection from the wet. So a cow that has an oily coat, when it rains, the rain will just run right off of them. It won't get into the coat at all, right? I think it also provides some form of heat conduction. It makes it easier to cool off. I'm not sure. I know cows sweat, right? So I've been out here on hot days and the cows are wet, right? Because they're sweating, and that sweat evaporates, helps to cool them down and stuff like that, you know? So the viable temperatures for cows. I know for a fact that cows can survive sub-zero temperatures, provided that they are dry and they are protected from the wind, okay? And because of that fact, if there's snow, they can burrow in the snow or take shelter in like a little valley of snow, and they can survive even on the Great Plains. So very cold temperatures is not too difficult for them. They really don't need barns, okay? Especially if they have a thick layer of fat. And when the cows put on fat, it's like when we put on fat, except for their fat, I think, is denser and thicker, right? There's more of it, and it's denser, right? It's like blubber on a whale, right? They can also survive extreme heat, I would say beyond 120 degrees Fahrenheit, which is what you get in the desert in Arizona, right? Are they gonna like it? No. Up until about 90, 95, they're pretty dang comfortable. Once it hits about 95, then they start seeking shelter from the heat, right? And they sweat, and so they can take, the wind is blowing from the west right now pretty strongly. They sweat, and so when the breeze blows, it will carry away some of that heat. It'll cool them off because of evaporation, right? So just like dogs like to get wet when they're hot. Cows sweat, dogs don't. Dogs pant. One of the things you can do for your dog to help the dog stay cool is to provide like a swimming pool or a pond. And these dogs, they like to get in the water. Oftentimes they'll come here, the first thing they'll do is get in the water. So, and you can see that their coat is just covered with mud and filthiness. So on hot days, the dogs go in the water. So that's the story on the cows. And you look at the other animals and they all have a similar story. They can tolerate very high temperatures and very low temperatures in extreme circumstances that we would just die in. If you put me out naked and it's 40 degrees outside, a cow would be perfectly happy. I would die like in an hour, right? If you put me out in 110 degree weather and I was buck naked, I'd probably die. You know, it'd just be too much. Couldn't handle it. Cows are fine though. So you don't need barns. I take that back. In certain weather conditions, a barn will be useful. Okay, ice storms where it's like barely freezing and it's wet. Or if the cows are wallowing in mud and it gets cold. They need shelter. But they can get that shelter from trees. They don't need a barn. They don't need air-conditioned rooms. It's nice. I'm sure the cows would appreciate it, but they don't need it. You just need to let them live in their environment. So that's my survey of the field, and that's my comment on whether cows, how they tolerate the heat and the cold. All right, have a great day, everybody. Bye-bye.